Connor Biddle's long-lost first love had been found. When he received the call from the police, he rushed out of the office in a panic, leaving his jacket draped over the chair. The business partners discussing a new collaboration froze in surprise, turning unanimously toward Ann Madison. "It's fine, let's continue," said Anne, retracting her gaze from Connor's disappearing figure. She offered a poised smile and seamlessly picked up where Connor had left off. "Now, about the investment for the new project." An hour later, Anne personally saw the partners off. Returning to the office, she picked up her phone to check it, but there was no message from Connor. Anne called him. The phone rang a few times before a girl's voice answered. "Hello? Where's Connor?" asked Anne after a pause. "He's in the kitchen, cooking," the girl replied, sounding slightly flustered. Anne's grip on the phone tightened involuntarily, and suspicion began to rise in her mind. The next moment, Connor's cold voice came through. "What is it?" Anne's eyes stung as she struggled to keep her emotions in check. "Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" she asked. In their 3 years of marriage, Connor had never cooked for her. She had always known he could cook. He had learned specifically for Felicia Yule when they were together. He knew perfectly well what she was asking, but Connor replied icily, "I'll explain everything to the business partners myself." Anne opened her mouth to speak several times but could not get any words out. As the evening sky darkened, she stood by the window, her eyes reddening. This afternoon, faced with the pitying and amused looks from the business partners after Connor's abrupt departure, she had excused him, thinking there might be something genuinely important. She had not expected that important thing to be meeting Felicia. Silence stretched over the line before Felicia's soft voice could be faintly heard. "Connor, who is it?" "An employee," Connor replied. Hearing his answer, Anne could not hold back her tears any longer. She could hear the two of them whispering in low voices, the phone muffled so their words were indistinct. Just as she was about to hang up, Connor spoke again, his tone slightly softer. "Anne, Felicia has amnesia. The doctor said she can't handle any emotional stress right now." He paused briefly, hesitating over how to explain that Felicia still believed they had not broken up. Looking back, he saw Felicia sitting on the couch, clutching a throw pillow so tightly that her fingers had sunk into it. Her once lively eyes held a cautious vulnerability. Feeling a pang in his heart, Connor turned away and calmly informed Anne, "She doesn't remember anything from the past 3 years. Whenever we bring it up, she gets debilitating headaches. She relies on me a lot right now, so I haven't told her that I'm married." Connor let out a long sigh, the weight on his heart easing. If Felicia had not disappeared 3 years ago, and would never have become his wife, he had already given her the title of Mrs. Biddle. However, after Felicia was found, he felt responsible for taking care of her until her memory returned. And listened quietly, neither arguing nor crying. The taut string in her heart finally snapped. "When do you plan on telling her?" asked Anne calmly. "So now I can't even go back to my own home, is that it?" Connor had prepared himself for a confrontation. Having grown up with Anne, he knew her temperament well. As kids, when playing house, if he played with another girl, Anne would tug at his hair and call him a traitor. They had been inseparable from kindergarten through high school. Back then, Connor had thought his future wife would surely be Anne. However, they parted ways on bad terms after they got into university. In university, Connor met Felicia, who confessed to him at their first meeting. The seemingly delicate girl was relentless in her pursuit, showing up at every game to bring him water. Once, Connor deliberately teased her by accepting water from someone else. Her bright eyes instantly reddened as though deeply wronged, yet she stubbornly took the water from his hand and replaced it with the one she had bought. Season after season, Felicia persisted for a year. One winter, when Connor said he was hungry, she pulled a still warm bun from her coat pocket and handed it to him with a smile. Luckily, it's still warm. At that moment, Connor's heart softened completely. He pulled her into an embrace. "Let's be together." When he announced a relationship on social media, and did not react. That same day, a 6-month-long experiment and had been working on failed. She had not missed the post. In fact, she looked at it dozens of times before forcing herself to close the app. It took 2 bottles of alcohol for her to fall asleep. Their friends all lamented their missed connection. The once proud Anne had stumbled only twice in her life. Both times over Connor. However, Felicia's reappearance made Anne realize something. Some battles are destined to have no victory. Listening to Anne's choked question, Connor found himself momentarily speechless. Felicia, noticing he was still on the phone, walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around him. Are you done? I'm hungry. He instinctively ended the call with Anne. Staring at the darkened screen of his phone, Connor hesitated for only a moment before pulling down Felicia's hands to hold them. I'm done, he said. The dishes he prepared were all Felicia's favorites. Connor watched her eat with a smile, glancing at the clock out of the corner of his eye. It was nearly 10 o'clock at night. The entrance remained quiet. At that moment, Anne's car had pulled into the neighborhood, but she sat there, unmoving. Even though she was Connor's wife, she felt like a thief spying on someone else's happiness. When she was abroad, she did not actively seek out news about Connor, yet friends would still update her. Connor had brought Felicia into their social circle. Because of Anne's presence, no one had been willing to interact with Felicia at their first meeting. It was said that Connor smashed a wine bottle in front of everyone to defend her. Anne had smiled bitterly when she heard this. Connor had always been like that. When he loved someone, he wanted the whole world to know. In high school, dating was forbidden, so Connor and Anne never officially got together. There were always admirers confessing to Anne. Once, a boy accidentally brushed her hand, and Connor, upon seeing it, broke that boy's hand. When he was forced to publicly apologize in front of the entire school, he was utterly defiant. Anne is mine. We'll be together after we get into university. Anyone who dares to confess to her again will get the same treatment. Later, Connor's parents had to visit the school and make a donation to avoid him being disciplined. The two had agreed to go abroad together, but when Connor failed his tests, he backed out and asked Anne to stay for him. However, going abroad had always been Anne's dream. She was firm in her decision, refusing to change her mind no matter what Connor said. On the day of Anne's coming-of-age celebration, Connor cornered her in her room. It was both of their first kisses, yet it was rough and biting. Connor even broke the skin on her lips, his eyes red as he questioned, "You won't even let me touch you, Anne? Did you never plan to be with me in the first place?" She furiously responded with a slap. Her hands trembled from the force. Connor stared at her for a long time before turning and leaving with a cold expression. Anne cried alone for a long time before fixing her dress and going downstairs. Her mother noticed the mark on her lip, hesitated to speak, and finally just patted her head. "Anne, no matter what you do, your dad and I will always support you." Years later, the Biddle family faced financial trouble. Connor called Anne after years of no contact. At first, neither of them spoke. "Do you need something?" Anne finally broke the silence. Connor's voice was hoarse. "Anne, if you're going to marry for convenience, would you consider me?" "You broke up," blurted Anne. It was a long time before she received Connor's soft reply. After the wedding, Anne learned the truth. Connor had taken Felicia on a sea voyage. As the boat neared the shore, she had fallen overboard. Connor immediately jumped in to save her. The crew, worried for Connor's safety, followed him into the water. He was rescued, but Felicia was never found. Not even her body. For 3 years, everyone assumed she had died. She was finally back, with her memory frozen 3 years in the past. And sat in the car for a long time, staring at the brightly lit villa from a distance. She and Connor both preferred dim lighting. The one who liked brightness was Felicia. Connor had brought her back to their home. Pain spread through Anne's heart like tiny needles. Just as she was about to get out of the car, the phone in the passenger seat started ringing. "Where are you?" Anne did not respond, and the cool breeze poured in through the slightly open car door. Even such a small sound was caught by Connor. His voice, laced with certainty, asked, "Did you go home?" He immediately added, "Don't come in, wait outside for me." Just through the phone, Anne could even tell that Connor was putting on his coat. His footsteps were hurried, but it seemed he was trying to stop her from entering, afraid that Anne would frighten Felicia. Connor left the villa, and only when he reached the corner did he spot Anne's car. Hearing the footsteps, Anne looked over at him. Her gaze was filled with disappointment, but more than that, it was calm. Connor's temples throbbed painfully twice. That look in her eyes was exactly the same as the one she had given him the night he forcefully kissed her after her coming-of-age ceremony. "I'll take her away tomorrow," said Connor, pulling open the car door. In a tone that suggested negotiation, he asked, "Can you stay somewhere else tonight?" And gripped her phone tightly. "When are you going to tell her that you're already married?" Connor instinctively wanted to avoid answering, but he bent down and single-handedly moved Anne into the passenger seat, then took the driver's seat himself. "I'll stay somewhere else with you." The car drove all the way to the hotel. Anne stared out the window, silent. However, just before getting out of the car, she suddenly turned her head and spoke each word clearly. "Connor, if you won't say it, we'll divorce." At the sound of the word divorce, Connor froze for a moment. "Are you serious?" Anne did not answer. Connor's vague attitude hurt her, and she feared that if she spoke, her tears would spill uncontrollably. She got out of the car and ignored Connor behind her, only thinking of getting as far away from him as possible. However, Connor quickly caught up and grabbed her hand. "Anne, in a while, when Felicia's condition stabilizes, I'll tell her." And looked at the man in the elevator mirror. In his rush, he had not fastened the buttons on his shirt, leaving 4 or 5 undone and exposing a small patch of his body. After 3 years of marriage, Connor had always kept his shirt buttons fully fastened in front of her. It was Anne who always initiated their once-a-week moment of intimacy. She clenched her palm tightly. When the elevator doors opened, she jerked her hand out of Connor's grasp. "In a while, huh? If your girlfriend wants to kiss you and sleep with you, you wouldn't refuse, would you?" Connor silently followed Anne. The phone kept ringing incessantly, making the quiet room feel tense. Connor listened to the sound of water running from the bathroom, took a long drag from his cigarette, and eventually answered the call. "Connor, aren't you coming back tonight?" "I'll bring you breakfast tomorrow morning," he replied. The indirect rejection made Felicia feel a bit wronged, and she cautiously said, "But I'm scared alone." The sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Connor tightened his grip on the phone, hesitated for a moment, and then reassured Felicia, "Be good. If you're scared, go to sleep early." He then hung up the phone and threw it onto the bed. He knew that if he hesitated for another second, he would not be able to stop himself from walking away. When Anne came out, Connor proactively went to help her dry her hair. As he gazed at her face, he felt a bit dazed. It seemed like it had been a long time since they had been intimate. He slowly bent down, but Anne dodged him. The kiss landed on the corner of her lips instead. Connor froze, not expecting Anne to reject him. After all, it had always been her who initiated before. Anne pushed Connor away, not even giving him a glance. She climbed into bed, turning her back to him. She could feel the intense gaze on her from behind. She knew that Connor was just avoiding the question she had asked earlier. Felicia had just returned, and Connor had brought her home. Anne did not want to think about what they would do in the coming days. She was not that generous, watching her husband with the woman he could not forget, entwined together. "Anne." Connor got into bed and hugged her from behind. A wave of heat spread between them as Connor kissed her neck, his actions expressing his desire. Anne pressed his hand down, her voice cold. "Don't touch me, Connor." "Why?" Connor bit her ear, not believing that and did not understand that this was his way of making peace. "I think you're disgusting," and sneered sarcastically as she was pressed under him. The words completely killed Connor's interest. He rolled over to the side. In the silence, the only sound was his heavy breathing, mixed with anger. After a long wait, Anne turned her back to him again without saying another word. "I didn't touch her." Connor moved closer again, burying his head into her shoulder and rubbing against it. "You never know," said Anne. Connor's patience wore thin. Outside, it started to rain lightly. Thinking about how Felicia was afraid of thunder, he got up and put on his clothes. When he left, he slammed the door loudly. The loud bang made Anne flinch. She opened her eyes, and tears slid down the corners of her eyes to the pillow. The pillow had already been soaked. Connor had forgotten that Anne, too, was afraid of thunder. When their families were neighbors, every time there was thunder, Connor would quietly climb over the wall and run to her room, making a makeshift bed beside her. He would smell her fragrance, and even when desire rose, he would only kiss the back of her hand with restraint. The girl he once held in his hands was left alone in a hotel. The rain grew heavier, and a flash of lightning split the darkness, illuminating Anne's pale face. She seemed to lose all her strength. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Walter Lindor. It was just a few words, but it took her half an hour. "Help me draft a divorce agreement. Have you thought it through?" Walter sat across from Anne and carefully handed her a set of cutleries after he had finished preparing them. "Anne, even though you signed a prenuptial agreement, if you can't provide evidence of Connor's wrongdoing, the lawsuit to make him leave empty-handed might not be successful." Although Anne had agreed to the marriage for the sake of a family alliance, she was not naive enough to give up everything. They had signed a prenuptial agreement stating that if Connor made any serious mistakes during their marriage, he would have to leave with nothing in the event of a divorce. Anne took a sip of water and replied calmly, "I'll get the evidence." Felicia still thought they were just a couple, and that the things that should happen between a normal couple would eventually happen. Connor would not reject her. Walter could see what Anne was thinking from her expression. A surge of anger rose within him, and he almost wanted to rush over and punch Connor. Connor and Anne's marriage, to put it nicely, was an alliance. To put it bluntly, it was the Madison family lifting the Biddle family out of a deep pit. Over the years, Anne had stayed by Connor's side, helping him manage the company efficiently. Connor. He did not even bother to show up at Anne's birthday party, always finding excuses to be away on business. The Connor who used to pamper Anne like a precious treasure had long since disappeared. Walter looked at Anne sympathetically. Even with makeup, it could not hide the puffiness around her eyes. The carefree girl from back then had become quieter over the years. Walter reached out, intending to pat Anne on the head. Just then, Connor stopped him. "What are you two doing?" Hearing his voice, Anne lifted her head and saw Felicia standing behind him, holding onto his shirt, staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Felicia was the complete opposite of Anne. Her smooth black hair cascaded over her shoulders, her delicate features highlighted by her white dress, giving her a pure and clean appearance. This was the first time Anne had seen Felicia. Of course, perhaps that was not entirely accurate, since the day after Connor made their relationship official, Felicia added Anne on social media. Seeing the intimate photos Felicia posted on her feed, Anne spent countless sleepless nights and even secretly scrolled through Felicia's social media, torturing herself by repeatedly looking at the daily life of Connor and Felicia as a couple. At some point, Felicia posted a caption that seemed to be directly aimed at Anne. "To some of you, can you stop spying on our lives?" Anne had never felt so humiliated. She turned off her phone and never tried to keep track of their updates again. "You didn't come to work today just to have a meal with Walter?" Connor's question snapped Anne out of her thoughts. She pulled her gaze away from Felicia and looked at Connor. "You can bring her to the company, and I can't even go out to have a meal? Why do you have to eat with him?" "Of all people, why Walter?" asked Connor. "What's wrong with Walter?" Anne's tone remained calm, but Connor was so angry his voice changed pitch. "Don't you know what Walter thinks of you?" Walter had once pursued Anne. Back in high school, they had been deskmates for a while and even participated in competitions together. However, Anne had been resolute and had politely turned him down. When Walter learned that Connor and Felicia were dating, he even got into a fight with Connor. He could not understand how Connor could give up someone as amazing as Anne. Later, when Connor and Anne got married, Walter even asked Anne in front of Connor if she wanted to leave with him. As for Connor, seeing them sitting together made him lose all composure. Ignoring Felicia, who stood beside him, he stormed up and slapped Walter's hand away. "Speak up," Connor demanded, pulling Anne up from her seat when she remained silent. "Speak about what?" Anne steadied herself by leaning on the table, avoiding falling into Connor's arms. "Maybe you should let M''S. Behind you have a word with me?" Anne's tone was indifferent. Felicia's expression darkened as she watched the two of them standing so close. She forced a sorrowful smile. "Connor, who is she?" Hearing Felicia's voice, Connor froze for a moment, releasing his grip on Anne's arm. and closed her eyes briefly before answering, "A colleague." Connor looked stunned and repeated calmly, "We're just colleagues." "Hello, I'm Felicia, his girlfriend." It was evident to anyone that something was off, but Felicia maintained her sweet, innocent smile. Clinging to Connor's arm, she extended her hand toward Anne and glanced at Connor. His jaw was tightly clenched, and he looked tense. Why was he nervous? Was he afraid and would reveal our relationship? Or was he worried and would embarrass Felicia? Felicia's hand hung in the air, but Anne merely stared at it without any intention of shaking it. Feeling humiliated, Felicia bit her lip and turned to Connor, tears welling in her eyes. Tears, the ultimate weapon. Almost instantly, Connor grasped her hand and intertwined their fingers right in front of Anne. "Ms. Yule, I heard you lost your memory, and it's stuck at 3 years ago." Walter, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "Do you still remember me?" Walter's questions seemed simple, but they made Felicia shrink back as if she was deeply wronged. She shook her head timidly. "That's unfortunate," said Walter, standing up and filling a glass with water. 3 years ago, when Connor brought you to meet us, I splashed water in your face," he said, pouring the glass of water over Felicia's face, "just like this." Felicia screamed, and Connor's fist immediately connected with Walter's face. "Who gave you the right to touch her?" Walter's face turned to the side with blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. As Connor's second punch was about to land, Anne stepped in between them, glaring coldly at Connor. "That's enough," she snapped, and grabbed Walter and left. Watching her retreating figure, Connor felt an inexplicable panic and wanted to follow her. However, Felicia clung to him with tears streaming down her face. "Connor, are you hiding something from me? Do you like that woman?" Connor almost revealed the truth, but seeing Felicia sobbing uncontrollably in his arms, he recalled the doctor's words. "Her emotions are very unstable right now, and she's heavily dependent on you. Try not to provoke her, or it might lead to psychological issues." If it had not been for him taking Felicia on that trip, she would not have gone missing. In the end, the responsibility still lay with him. Connor let Felicia cling to him, watching Anne's figure disappear from sight. Carrying Felicia in his arms, he felt a mix of guilt and irritation. "She has nothing to do with me. Let me take you home." A flash of jealousy passed through Felicia's eyes, but she obediently wrapped her arms around Connor's neck and nodded. "Are you okay?" and pulled some tissues from the car and carefully wiped the corner of Walter's mouth. "Anne, what Connor said earlier." "Walter," Anne interrupted, taking a step back. "How soon can you draft a divorce agreement?" Her words created an invisible distance between them. Realizing he had been too forward, Walter hesitated for a moment. "At least 2 weeks." Anne nodded. She knew the financial ties between her and Connor were complicated, and it would take time to sort everything out. "Connor, what time are you coming home tonight?" Outside, Felicia noticed Anne standing not far away and buried herself in Connor's embrace, gazing at him expectantly as she spoke. Connor's eyes briefly met Anne's cold, indifferent expression. Suddenly, he found it hard to answer. However, Felicia pressed on, her shallow breast brushing against his chin. "Connor, I can't sleep without you by my side." Connor stiffened. Hastily, he placed Felicia into the car and vaguely replied, "I'll be back." The car sped past Anne and Walter. Walter clenched his fists and could not help cursing under his breath. Turning to console Anne, he found her smiling at him as if she had not seen any of it. "I'll collect the evidence as soon as possible," she said calmly. After parting ways with Walter, Anne did not return to the office. Instead, she went straight home. In the master bedroom, a nightgown lay discarded on the bed. It was hers, but it was evident that Felicia had worn it. The dress had been part of a surprise she prepared for Connor's birthday that year. 3 years of marriage, with both families urging them to have a child, yet Connor always took precautions with meticulous care. That night, Anne had stopped him. "Connor, let's have a child." Connor had responded with a cold laugh, kissing her passionately until she was lost in the moment. In the end, he did not follow through with her wishes. As she looked at the wrinkled camisole dress, and turned pale, her mind consumed by images of Connor holding Felicia in his arms as they slept. She ran into the bathroom, dry heaving into the sink. After the nausea subsided, she turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on her face. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, her face was still striking but haggard. And suddenly thought of her time studying abroad. Back then, she had stood in front of a packed lecture hall, speaking with confidence and grace. She had straight A's, and her name still adorned the school's wall of honor. At a globally top-ranked university, she had excelled academically and achieved outstanding research results. People admired her, and every day someone new confessed their feelings for her, only to be turned down with the excuse of focusing on her studies. Was that the real reason? And knew deep down that it was because she could not let go of Connor. She had never understood why her decision to study abroad, such a minor thing, had elicited such a strong reaction from him. All that, and within a year, he found someone else. She realized it was simply because his love for her had never been enough. A wry smile spread across Anne's face, a smile that marked the moment she truly let Connor go. I have a meeting tonight to discuss a collaboration. Finally finding a reason to speak with her, Connor blocked Anne in the living room as she came out for a glass of water. For days, Anne had not only moved into the guest bedroom but also ignored him entirely. At the office, she only spoke to him when necessary for work. At home, she would shut herself in the study. The investment they last negotiated was at the contract signing stage. Connor seized the opportunity to start a conversation. Got it, and replied curtly, finishing her water without any unnecessary words before heading upstairs. Connor, frustrated, followed her. Just as she was about to close the bedroom door, he reached out to stop it, slipping inside before she could react. Pinning her against the door, he leaned in and bit her lip. The sharp pain made Anne frown. Connor, what are you doing? Connor did not know what had come over him. And had ignored him for just a few days, yet it made him so restless that he could not sleep. Because of his demanding job, Connor had begun showing early signs of arthritis in his neck. To help him, Anne had learned massage techniques, massaging him every night. She even consulted a doctor friend and spent a lot on specially made patches. Though Connor often showed frustration, Anne would still coax him into using them. With things finally quiet, he found he could not adjust to the piece. Connor stared at her pale, delicate face, his throat tightening. Unwilling to admit he could not sleep without holding her, he awkwardly said, "The patches you bought me are gone." Suspicious, and replied, "Didn't you say you didn't like wearing them?" "But my neck's been hurting a lot lately," said Connor, his tone self-assured. He expected her to show concern. Instead, she calmly said, "I'll send you the doctor's contact. You can buy them yourself from now on." "But you've always bought them for me before." "Connor, aren't you tired of this?" And pushed him away forcefully. "I'm busy. If you don't have time, you can ask Felicia." Connor froze. "You're telling me to go to Felicia?" "Yes." And did not hesitate. Connor grabbed her shoulders tightly. "Anne, I'm your husband. Are you pushing me towards someone else?" "Oh, you remember you're my husband now?" Neither of them had brought up what had happened that day. Even though she had met with Walter for lunch, Connor had taken Felicia to his company. Why should he be the one to back down? Seeing the anger on her face, Connor suddenly pulled her into an embrace. "Anne, are you jealous?" And froze. Her reaction seemed to confirm it in Connor's eyes. He smirked. "I told you, I won't betray you during our marriage. Anne, the doctor said Felicia's condition is improving. Just give me a little more time." This time, Connor gave a definite time frame. "In a month, I'll tell her the truth." Held tightly in his arms, and could hear Connor's heartbeat. She momentarily lost focus. In their younger days, whenever she did not do well on a test, Connor would hold her like this. Back then, his scent was a clean, refreshing mint. Instinctively, she took a light breath, but the mint was mixed with a sickly sweet orange scent. She never used a perfume with that fragrance. Looking up at Connor, she asked, "Do you still love her? Do you still love her? Did you ever love me?" Connor did not catch the subtext in her question. His gaze wavered. "Anne, she disappeared because of me. I can't just abandon her." Seeing the disappointment in her eyes, Connor felt a wave of panic. It was something he had been experiencing often lately. He leaned in to kiss her and turned her face away. "You'll be late for your meeting." "I'll be quick," he murmured, trailing kisses from the corner of her lips down to her neck. Sensing her resistance, he bit her. When she shoved him away forcefully, Connor glanced at the mark on her neck. Instead of getting angry, he simply followed her as she moved and grabbed a dress and went into the bathroom. The door slammed shut in front of Connor's face. He rubbed his nose with an amused glint in his eyes. Leaning against the door, he waited for her, just like he used to wait for her after school years ago. However, as those memories surfaced, his smile froze. When he realized what he was doing, his expression darkened. His mind drifted back to the scene abroad when he saw her in another man's arms, being kissed. During the business meeting, Connor was visibly uninterested. After being stood up once before, the business partners had a grudge and took every opportunity to urge Connor to drink. "Mr. Biddle, this isn't very sporting of you," commented one of the partners when Connor only drank half his glass. The man glanced at Anne beside him, still smiling but with a faint hint of displeasure. "If you can't handle it, why not let Ms. Madison step in for you? Everyone knows how much Ms. Madison dotes on Mr. Biddle. She always shields you from drinking too much." Hearing this, Connor's expression softened. When they first got married, Connor had been in a slump due to Felicia's disappearance, neglecting his work entirely. It was Anne who held everything together, attending every drinking party herself. Later, when accompanying Connor to negotiations, she would often shield him from drinking excessively, knowing his stomach could not handle it. Everyone's eyes were on Anne, including Connor's. This time, Anne simply smiled faintly. "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well." The partners showed their disappointment. Dressed in a wine-red gown that set off her snow-white skin, and looked stunning. Her cool, striking face remained expressionless, but they could not help imagining how breathtaking she would look with a flush of drunkenness. Unable to satisfy their unsavory thoughts, they redirected their efforts to Connor, increasing their pressure on him. Connor was well aware of Anne's condition. Lowering his eyes, he concealed the emotions swirling within them. One drink after another, he drank, but a restless irritation churned within him, threatening to explode. Connor's hand tightened slightly around Anne's waist. "This collaboration is important," Anne softly reminded him, leaning close to his ear when she noticed his growing displeasure. The deal was worth billions, and it mattered greatly to her. After all, it was her money at stake. Connor stared at her profile for a moment before loosening his tie and exhaling sharply. Forcing a smile, he endured. They stayed in the private room for a full hour before the partners finally relented and signed the deal. After seeing them off, Anne returned to the room, only to find Connor passed out from drinking. She gave him a light kick. "Help me up," Connor murmured, squinting as he reached a hand toward her. The moment she pulled him up, he collapsed onto her. The overpowering smell of alcohol made her instinctively pull away, but Connor gripped her chin and kissed her hard. It was not a kiss, it was more like a bite. "Anne, are you hiding something from me?" "No," she replied calmly, her expression unchanged. Connor stared at her for a long time, feeling like he could no longer understand her. She used to wear her emotions on her sleeve, and her thoughts were easy to guess. "I feel like you've been a little distant with me lately." Perhaps because he was so drunk, Connor rested his head on her shoulder, his voice carrying a rare hint of vulnerability. In truth, it was not just a little distance. He wanted to say it was a lot. She no longer shielded him from drinking. Their once weekly moments of intimacy had stopped. She used to care about the scandals he stirred up, even arguing with him over them. That changed, and she even pushed him toward Felicia without hesitation. For the first time, Connor felt that maybe, just maybe, Anne did not love him anymore. "You're overthinking it." After a moment of silence, Anne helped him out of the room. As she anticipated, all it took was a single post on her social media, a photo of Connor's hand, and Felicia had already shown up. "Ms. Madison, let me take over." Felicia stepped forward, grabbing Connor's hand and trying to pull him out of Anne's hold. Anne did not let go. Felicia's gaze swept over the kiss mark on Anne's neck, her smile fading. "Ms. Madison, I'm his girlfriend." For a moment, their eyes met. And asked, "Has Connor ever mentioned me to you?" Felicia's expression remained unchanged. "No, he hasn't." And fell silent, lost in thought. Connor groggily opened his eyes. When he saw Felicia, he called out, "Felicia." Felicia's face lit up with satisfaction. Ignoring whether Anne was letting go or not, she managed to pull Connor into her arms. Seeing the familiar car, Connor instinctively moved to the back seat. Felicia could not hold him back and grew anxious. "Connor, I called for a car. Just wait a moment." "What car?" "This is my car." Connor opened the door and got in, pulling Felicia along with him. Once inside, he rested his head on her lap. Felicia sighed softly. "Ms. Madison, could you give us a ride home?" And moved to the driver's seat. "Sure." Felicia had not expected her to agree. As she looked down at Connor, peacefully sleeping on her lap, she swallowed hard and leaned down slightly. "Connor," she called softly, her voice gentle. "Are you feeling unwell?" Her hand barely brushed Connor's forehead when he grabbed it. Connor opened his eyes slightly, his thoughts hazy as memories of his past with Felicia surfaced. Back then, they had been in a car too. Felicia, her cheeks flushed, had perched shyly on his lap. "Connor, I really like you," she had said. His heart had softened. He had cupped the back of her neck and kissed her. At this moment, in his half-conscious state, he seemed to relive that moment, pulling Felicia into a deep kiss. Startled for only a second, Felicia quickly reciprocated, her response growing more fervent, soft moans escaping her lips. The sound of their intimacy filled the car. Despite steeling herself, and bit her lip hard to keep herself from looking back. Felicia, however, was determined to provoke her. "Connor, gentler. Connor, don't touch there. Connor, can we wait until we're home?" And gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles turning white from the strain. When the car finally stopped, she exhaled the breath she had been holding. After a few deep breaths, she coldly reminded them, "We've arrived. Ms. Madison, could you help me bring Connor inside?" Felicia asked with an air of triumph. And lowered her eyes. "Of course." The moment Connor was placed on the bed, he pinned Felicia beneath him. Felicia turned her head to glance at Anne, pretending to resist. "Connor, Ms. Madison is still here." Quietly, and placed a tiny hidden camera inside a flower vase. Her gaze fell on Felicia's face, flushed from Connor's kisses. "Ms. Yule," she said, her tone calm but cutting, "since Connor has never mentioned me to you, how did you know my last name is Madison?"